In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. As you can see here on page 230, there is another second, in fact, metaphor, okay, about language acquisition. So, about second language acquisition. According to this second metaphor, we say that, well, in the second language acquisition system, again we have something similar to the first language. You already saw on page 50 that we have something like page 50 we had figure 2.2, which said that we have something like figure 2.2, which says that there is an initial state S0 and a steady state SS, okay? And there we said that we have the universal grammar to the left, and which includes principles like locality, etc., and parameters like head initial or head final, okay, which is unset. And after that, we have the lexicon, the vocabulary, which is unfilled. So as the child develops to, in fact, other stages of language acquisition, we have something like steady state, okay? So we have initial state S0, and after that we have S1, S2, S3, S4, etc., up to Sn, you remember. Well, what happens when you have reached the Sn? It means that you have got a steady state SS, steady state, like steady S and state S. So steady state is S capital, S small, okay, SS, okay. Of course, it is subscript S. It is not. It is a subscript S. Okay. If there is something above, we say it is superscript. If it is something below, we say it is subscript. So S subscript S. Okay. So what did we have there? We have I language. Remember, we talked about I language, which includes principles like locality, etc., parameters like head initial, head final. But here, what is the difference between the one to the right here and the left one which is located to the left side? Well, there is only one difference. To the right, we have set. To the left, we have unset. Okay, so this is the difference. Set to the right, unset to the left. Again, what about the vocabulary? At first, the child does not have vocabulary, so it is unfilled. The vocabulary is not, look at my hand, unfilled, okay? Now, when the lexicon is available to the child, we say this is filled. The vocabulary is filled, or the lexicon is filled. Now, back from page 50 to page 230. What do we see? Again, we see the same type of thing that we already had on first language. We are going to repeat the same idea here. So we have, again, initial state and final state. Initial state and final state. The same things that we said about on page 50 could be repeated here. Okay? So initial state to the left, initial L1 state to the left, final L1 state to the right. Okay? Now, let us go to the second part of this diagram. Okay? The second part of this figure. Well, let us see what is the situation for L2. Again, we have the same type of things. Let us see. Again, we have principles like locality and parameters like movement and lexicon. Okay, you can see it exactly one after another, located to the left. Okay, Now we say to the left, again everything is unset. And let us go to the second part of the lower part of the right side, in fact, figure. What is the final state for L2 acquisition? The final state for L2 acquisition has got again the same thing. Principles like locality, etc. Parameters like movement, etc. What is the difference? The difference is something like this. To the left, we have unset. To the right, we have set. Okay? This is the difference. And to the left, we have lexicon filled. To the right, we have unfilled. So, compare it. This is what we have. This is what we have for the second language acquisition. Well, I'm gonna say something else, which actually you see on in fact the PDF that this lecture includes. Maybe you can read it, but the PDF is poor quality. You can easily see it, or maybe somebody is going to write something on it and send it to the group of the students. I can easily see it and understand that everything is okay. Why? Because I don't have a whiteboard here for you to write everything there. I have written on my book for you to see here on, in fact, your shasha. Okay? But if you want to actually see it clearly, you are recommended, somebody is recommended to have the corrections on page 230, and after that you are supposed to put a clearer picture of it. Maybe I'm gonna put a picture for you on your WhatsApp page. Okay? Well, what is wrong? The wrong side is for the first language acquisition on top, which is set. The word set and filled must be changed to unset and unfilled. Okay? This is the mistake in the book, and try to correct it and send it back to me. I'm gonna, in fact, show the picture to you if you want to actually see it. Well, so far so good. This is the second state metaphor, the states metaphor. So if I ask, what is the states metaphor for a second language acquisition? We simply say that Chomsky says that there is no difference between first language and second language. So all kinds of models, all kinds of metaphors like the one that we have here could actually be applied to, in fact, the second language. So what does it mean? If you are able to learn a second language, if you are able to acquire a first language, you are equally able to acquire a second language. This is what I wanted to say. Okay, below on page 230 we have something like this, 4 lines to the bottom. Let's say what it is written there. Let us talk through the implications of this state's metaphor for SLA, second language acquisition. What is the implications? We are going to see what is the results of these types of things that we have so far. If you actually go to, in fact, the last lines, the last 3 lines, you can see it is written something like this. In L1 acquisition, the initial 0 state is S0. Okay, this is something different from what is there for the first language. There's something, this notation is different. The notation that we use for L1 is different from the notation that we use for L2, okay? Now, let us see. In L1 acquisition, the initial state S0 is simply UG. The distinctiveness The distinctiveness of L2 acquisition is that one language has already been acquired there. So when you actually develop a second language, you have already had another language. So it's your second language. So, in other words, L2 initial state SI differs by definition in already containing a steady state SS grammar of some human language. So if you are going to develop a second language, you have already had another language available to you. You have already had another language already to you. It's Arabic for you, it's Farsi for me. It's Arabic for you, it's Farsi for me. So when you're acquiring a second language, well, you have already had your Arabic. That's why we talk to someone and say, yes, he is an Arab. Why? We talk in English, but still we say that he is an Arab. Why? He's an Arab, okay? Why? Simply because there's SS with Arabic available there. If you actually talk to me or all other professors in Iran, you see that their English is quite different. Why? Because their first language, my first language, is Farsi. Okay? So I have got something called SS like Farsi. You have got something like SS like Arabic, which is Arabic. So this is the difference. Okay? There is one difference between L2 and L1. When we talk about L2, we are going to talk about something inside the language acquisition device, their first language. So their first language is already set there, and it actually remains there for the rest of the life of that person. Okay. Now let us go to line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Line 9 of page 231. The final state. What is the final state? For the final state, we can say that the final state might alternatively consist of two grammars. The final state of L2 is or already has something like the first language. So if they say that you are an Arab student, you are an Arab, not a student, you are an Arab, and you know English, what does it mean? You have got one steady state Arabic, and you're developing the second language, English. Okay? This is the final state. The final state of you is actually something like this: Arabic and English. And let us go to the second bullet on page 231, which is intermediate states and processes. Well, for the intermediate states and processes, we say that, well, language is developmental. Well, you know something today, and after that, you actually develop a new kind of vocabulary in your second language, let's say English. The next day, another vocabulary. The next day, some other pieces of vocabulary. Okay? It's like this. And the next day, we are more fluent. The next day, again more fluent. One day, you know one grammar, and again, another day, you develop another language. So, intermediate states and processes is like this. By and by, there's something like development. So, this is the end of the discussion on states and metaphors, which appeared on page 228. Okay, so there were two models and metaphors. Number one was language acquisition device metaphor on page 229, and there's another one on page 230, which is the states metaphor. Okay, these are important for you to understand the nature of the second language, not your second language, but the second language. Thank you very much.